Ravenloft is a hell of a setting in Dungeons and Dragons. It was best in AD&D. Ever since then, it's kind of... I don't know why they did what they did to Ravenloft. Well, I know what they did, but it was called the Grand Conjunction, in which they almost literally tore Ravenloft a new asshole. A new asshole appeared in it, and shit poured out of it, you know. But that it was never quite the same after that. But in AD&D, before all that, it was a great setting. It still is. But then they started changing around the Dark Lords, and I never really liked it after that. But back in its prime, it was really good. And I learned a lot from that setting from back when I played. It's how I learned a lot of really good lessons. It's not... I want to say it's not a very good game for long-term campaigns. Although, when I say that, I played I'll say a moderate-term campaign. Campaigns don't tend to last very long in Ravenloft. It's not a meat grinder when it comes to campaigns. It tends to be violent. Not as violent as, say, Call of Cthulhu. Although, I do have a tip for... I was going to save this from the video, but it's a short tip, so... Call of Cthulhu tip. Don't kill your players. I know that sounds bizarre, because Call of Cthulhu is widely regarded as a meat grinder. Don't do it. Unless they have it coming, which oftentimes they do. The point of Call of Cthulhu is insanity. People die in Call of Cthulhu, but you want to see them go insane. Now, someone has to die, because gore is a big part of it. You know, seeing someone mutated into horrible alien mutant spawn is better. So, like, seeing somebody torn apart is horrible. Okay, you can do that. Mutated into a horrible gibbering alien spawn, that's way better. They're still effectively dead in terms of role-playing, but that's way better. But the whole point of Call of Cthulhu is turning them slowly insane over the course of a longer campaign. That's much more satisfying. So, avoid killing them if you can. Now, if they're just outright feeding themselves to the monster, well, you have no choice. But anyway, in terms of Ravenloft, yeah, the character lifespans tend to be a little bit shorter. Retirement tends to creep on them a little faster. But this is a game I had with my older brother. He was getting me into D&D. So I'm gaming with some of his friends, some of my friends. We kind of formed a group. So this happened for a few months. We started at a kind of a medium level. And so I normally kind of try to fill gaps when it comes to player balance. Usually that's not a good way to play. I normally don't force players to do that, because oftentimes you have to play character classes you don't want to play. That sucks. Especially when you're forced to play, like, the cleric, or when you're forced to play the wizard, and you don't want to play the cleric or the wizard. I usually don't mind doing that, unless sometimes I really don't want to, but if it's a spellcaster, I'm usually really fine with it, because I like playing spellcasters. But in this case, I usually don't like playing fighters, is what I don't like to do. But in this case, I wanted to play a paladin. And I don't know what that is, but no, I may not know what that is, but Strahd does. For those of you who don't know. Well, for those of you who don't know what Ravenloft is essentially the Twilight Zone is inaccurate. It's called the Demiplane of Dread. It's almost it's like hell, but it's not hell for you. It's a group of connected dark realms that are each one is ruled over by what's called a Dark Lord. So one in particular, the most well-known, is called Barovia, who is ruled over by a vampire named Strahd von Zarevich. This realm is essentially constructed specifically for him, specifically to torment him, because his entire tale, which is told in a novel called I, Strahd, his tale is one of tragic romance in which he murders / drives to suicide his one true love, Tatiana, and so his entire existence is one of tragedy and self-hatred and loathing, and because of his, he also is a horrible warlord who has committed grave atrocities, and so when his true love sees what he has become, he also has murdered her betrothed, and so when she sees what he has become, she throws herself / is frightened away from him off the roof, off a wall. So because of his evil deeds, he basically creates this hell around himself, and the dark powers of Ravenloft perpetually basically reincarnate Tatiana, and just when she is within reach, she dies again. And usually, sometimes it's his fault, sometimes it's not. But just when happiness is within his grasp, she dies once again. So it's his eternal torment, and he keeps falling for it over and over and over again because he believes in his heart of hearts that one day he will manage to outsmart the dark powers of Ravenloft and, secure happiness once again. So that's what I mean is, it's some kind of dark realm, Ravenloft it's grim, it's evil, it's basically a world that is governed by evil. I call it grimdark. It's a very dark, evil place that's essentially ruled over by very sadistic, tormenting power. So it's almost like, I want to say it's like the Twilight Zone. It's like a dark realm. If the only gods that were listening were essentially ones that like to toy with you, kind of like that. Not making any sense, but it's very dark, very gothic, very gothic. Very Edgar Allan Poe, actually, actually almost literally Edgar Allan Poe, because they released kind of a more modern version of it called Mask of the Red Death, which is Poe. It's almost a kind of parallel to Call of Cthulhu, really, kind of Cthulhu with Gaslight, which is. It's kind of like the Gaslight take on Ravenloft, where it's like the dark powers of Ravenloft translated to the more modern times, kind of the times of Edgar Allan Poe. Not quite the same, but it wasn't very good, honestly, because it introduced guns, and guns were always kind of an imperfect prospect in AD&D. Anyway, so whatever a paladin is, Strahd von Zarevich knows what it is, and the catch with playing a paladin is that when you're a paladin in Ravenloft, because Ravenloft is essentially a domain of evil, and they are ruled over by, the domains are ruled over by dark powers, and they are ruled by dark lords. If you are a paladin who are literally, they're not literally incarnations of good, but they are essentially avatars of, they are the walking proxies of gods of good alignments. So they are the weapons of good. They are the swords of goodness and righteousness on earth. There is no one more holy or righteous on the earth than paladins. Okay? So when one of them is walking around on Ravenloft, it is like holding a blowtorch in a dark room. It is. So when a paladin is walking around on Ravenloft, Strahd von Zarovich knows. A Dark Lord not only knows, he knows exactly where he is. He or she. He knows exactly where he or she is. And it says that in the books. Like, he just knows. He can, like, close his... Oh, he's over there. He can point on a map and be like, I know where the Paladin is. He's over there. I'm going to find out what one... I'm going to find out what a Paladin is. And he goes over there and he finds out. So, like, you know, I'm reading this and I know what's going on. I know what I'm saying here. And the players are like, well... Now, that's not to say it's a death sentence. Okay? Because here's the thing. The Dark Lords are untouchable. Okay? You know, so... And the Dark Lords know this. They're not scared of you. Okay? They're not scared of the level 5 Paladin. They don't sweat my ass. They don't think... Even if they think that I'm likely to go kicking down the portcullis of Castle Ravenloft and go stomping up to his throne room and calling his ass out, they really don't. Like, they're not sweating the spoony Paladin coming over and sticking a sword in his heart. And even if I did, even if for some miracle I fucking critted the motherfucker and put my sword in his heart, it ain't gonna help. You can't kill them. In fact, the Ravenloft guys are one of, like, the only examples of guys that you basically cannot kill. They almost have immunity from being killed. Those are one of the few guys where DMs can just be like, yeah, even if you kill them, you can't kill them. They'll just come back. Because you can, like, even if I physically demolished Strahd von Zarovich, like, if I just paladined the shit out of him, he'll be back. Because the dark powers of Ravenloft will not let them die. They'll, like, the dark powers will just be like, good job, he's back. It may take him a while, but, like, they'll wait till you go away and be like, oh, Strahd's back. He's pissed, you know. Because the Dark Lords are the dark powers' playthings. They're not going to let you, or instead of letting you kill them, they'll stop you somehow. And it could be anything from, it could be indirect, it could be direct, that you won't win. You know, so these Dark Lords don't sweat you. So that's actually one of your greatest strengths. You know, that's actually what's working for you, is the fact that they're untouchable. Because even though the Dark Lord knows exactly where you are at any given time, it's almost like he don't care. You know, he's like, oh, good, a paladin. Cool. Now, if you're actively interfering in what he's doing, then he cares, and he'll fucking kill you. But, you know, it's like, he don't care. And so, this is where I started really getting impressed with the DM, was the fact that the party was kind of like, I don't know, I don't really like Strahd knowing exactly where we are. And so, but I was like, hey, you know, I want to play. You guys need a healer, and you kind of need a secondary healer, and this is tough shit. So, like, I'm playing. So, like, okay. So, and besides, like, you need a guy who can kick some ass for the Lord, and like it or not, I'm going to be one. What they were really afraid of is I was going to be a lawful good prick. And I am not the guy who plays a paladin like a lawful good prick. So, and none of them were evil. They were really afraid of me and me fighting with my older brother. Because my older brother is a necromancer in this game. And he called himself Vem the Digger. And so, my brother also impressed me in that a lot of them did not, but he played a chaotic good necromancer. And a lot of people, at the time anyway, did not believe that was possible. Because necromancers, by their very nature, deal in black magic. Like, as black as it gets. They deal with shit where they're raising the dead. And they're casting shit where they have to, like, harvest harvest shit from dead bodies. That's evil shit. So, you know, I'm like, really? I don't know how that's possible. And Doug is his name. He's like, it's okay. Like, it's possible. I'm like, okay. And like, I'm going like, my paladin is probably not going to be okay with what you're doing here. And he's like, it's okay. Just trust me. I'm like, oh, okay. So, you know, my guy meets them, and like, how you doing? You know, and my guy, I know how this is way before Game of Thrones. I go, my name is Sir Stark, and as you know, blah blah. And he goes, hello, I'm Vem the Digger. Do you need any grave digging done? And I go, no. So, but that was his thing, is he would go around, he was carrying a shovel, and he'd always have a shovel over his shoulder. And that was how he did his thing, was he'd charge 5 coppers to dig a grave. And so he would, you know, if anyone needed to bring out their dead, he'd go do his thing, and he would discreetly harvest parts from whatever he needed to do his necromancy thing. His deal was, the reason he was chaotic good was that he was an undead slayer. So he used his magics to better understand the undead and use that knowledge to better slay them or use them against each other. So it was a tenuous justification, but it was a justification. And so that's the thing, that's one of the things with Ravenloft, is that you're walking the edge a lot. There actually is kind of like dark side points. There's like, you know, in like Star Wars, there's light side and dark side. There actually are more than any other D&D setting. There are alignment enforcements. Whenever you commit an overtly evil act, you get strikes against you. So you have to make what's called a dark powers check. So you have to make a morality check basically anytime you commit a really grave act. If you fail that check, the dark powers of Ravenloft take notice and they reward you for doing this. They like when you do bad things, so they give you a reward. And those rewards are, there's a random table, but the DM can do whatever he likes if, you know, he wants to give you something. So these rewards can be anything from like giving you like demonic eyes, like glowing red eyes, which give you infravision, or, you know, lets you cast the fear spell from your eyes, give you really intimidating eyes. The secondary ones may even be like you grow wings, like you grow demonic wings. So as you commit these evil acts, you get powers. So you can actually see benefits from committing these evil acts. Do you see where I'm going with this? So this necromancer, more than any of the other characters, he's walking the line, you know, because he's dabbling in some black arts here. So even my guy's like, he doesn't know he's a necromancer, but he knows he's up to something, because you could tell after a little while hanging out with this guy, you could tell he's a spellcaster, because as soon as we get into combat, shit's going down, you know. So I knew what he was doing, and I had to talk in with this guy. So I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, hey, and it's very clear that he has issues with the undead, especially when we ran into the werewolves. You know, by the time we started running into werewolves, he took a very keen interest in harvesting body parts. You know, and the vampires, he started collecting teeth. And he started collecting werewolf blood, and he started collecting ghoul hearts and things like that. And I'm starting to think this guy's useful, especially since he shows no love for these guys. You know, he's got these little glass jars, and he's keeping shit, and I'm like, okay, just stay away from me with that ghoul shit and the werewolf blood. Yeah, just staying over there. I'll kill him for you. You can take whatever you want, just keep it away from me. Killing him's fine, you know. So, but yeah, he's walking the line. None of us are really making dark powers checks, so I'm okay. So we actually are playing for quite a while, and eventually Strahd comes down. He just walks right up to our camp. Not walk so much as appears, and don't really have to ask how he found us, because I might as well just be like firing flares into the air, because he goes, Sir Stark, pleased to make your acquaintance finally, and I don't have to ask how he knows my name. So I'm like, I kind of reach for my sword, and I'm like, oh, there's no fucking point. And in fact, he kind of, like, I'm about to say, like, I roll a hat, and even the DM is like, even in character, he's like, in Strahd's voice, he goes, I can see you, you can tell there's no point, can you? And he's like, you're very smart. So, he goes, I have a proposition for you. And my guy is like, you have a I have nothing to say to you, black-hearted vampire, be gone from my sight. You know, I'm doing my whole paladin shit. You know, I'm like, I may not be able to harm you yet, but one day, Strahd, I will, you know, I will find a way. That's, you know. So, and he's like, spare me your idle threats. He says, believe it or not, I consider myself the protector of this realm. Yeah, and so I'm like, ha! Surely you jest. He's like, these people live in peace, do they not? It's like, these villages, have they come under harm? Have I come down as, you know, on dragons? Have I come down as some great winged bat and pulled people from their beds? These people are perfectly safe under my rule. I ask nothing but the occasional tribute and taxes, and in return, I keep them safe, and I, you know, that, you know, and I'm like, This is also, believe it or not, Strahd keeps the place orderly. As orderly as possible. He's an evil dude, you know, but you know, as they say, the trains run on time. He's an evil guy. He's an evil motherfucker. And he does eat people. But by and large, he does protect his own, if that makes sense. Like, acts of chaos do not serve his purposes. Having people tear his, you know, having monsters tear his people apart doesn't help him. He collects taxes. Having chaos and monsters and shit going down, having his people torn to pieces, that's not what he wants. And so he's explaining this to me, and he's like, well, so as I'm getting to my point before you interrupted me, we have a problem. And he says, that problem I mentioned is there is a particularly nasty group of, there's a particularly nasty group of brigands that's causing quite a bit of terror along the main roads. And I'm like, who are these people? And he goes, I don't know. And that's what bothers me. I know everything that's going on in my realm. And I'm like, yeah, I guess you do. And he's like, so I want you to go find out for me and stop it. And I'll reward you handsomely. And I go, you'll reward me? I'm not working for you. And he goes, fair enough. He says, I suppose then that you'll be perfectly happy to let all these innocent women and children and merchants die along the roads. Farewell. And he leaves. And I'm like, shit. So now I'm working for Strahd von Zarevich. What am I going to do? Am I going to say, like, guess, because this DM is genius. This DM is brilliant. Because, like, what am I going to do? Like, because he's right. He's just told me about these guys, like, he's told me about whatever is going on, who's tearing, like, merchant caravans apart. He's tearing the, the Vistani apart. He's tearing, recently they attacked, like, a town, and, like, they don't know what's going on. You know, even Strahd doesn't know what's going on, which is impossible. So he's like, well, the innocent people are dying, and I guess you don't care. Bye! You know, he's like, I'm offering you money, but if you don't want it, okay. Okay, bye. So my guy's like, well, I'm not doing it for you, but... So the other guys are like, we'll do it! You know, so, like, now I'm working for Strahd whether I like it or not. Because I have to. I'm like, these are innocent people. I gotta do it. So, like, already, now look at what I'm doing. Whether, like... Because, what do I... This guy is, like, this DM, I like this guy already. You can see how you can use somebody's alignment against them. Because you can make them do stuff they would normally do, because it serves everyone's interest. It serves the bad guy's interest as well. And by doing that, you can make them take dirty money. You know what I mean? Because he's like, hey, look, I'm not telling you to do something you wouldn't already do. I'm just letting you take some money for it. Now, you going to do it or not? You know what I mean? So he's like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, so everyone else in the party is like, oh, it's money, man. You know, or he'll be like, look, I'll give you some up front. Like, if you want to go shopping, if you want to go buy some weapons so you're better equipped, like if you want some like health potions, I can outfit you so you're better equipped to deal with this, because I want this stuff just as much as you do. See, I'm working for the guy now. In fact, by the end of this, I might owe him. This is brilliant. So, like, I'm already impressed with this guy, because I'm like, I'm already in it now, and I don't know how to get out. Because I can't walk. I can't walk away from this. So I'm like, fuck you. I'm like, fuck this guy. Fuck Ravenloft. This guy, I want to kill this guy. And I'm like, I love this guy. So we're going around and we're trying to figure out what's going down, and we're basically following a trail of dead bodies, and we find out it's a bunch of horsemen. There's some kind of horsemen going around who are just butchering these people, and we finally find someone who has survived the attacks, and they basically describe a band of skeletal horsemen who are riding around killing these people, and they are led by another warrior clad in black plate mail with flaming red eyes. And we figure it out basically immediately for what it is, a Death Knight. And a Death Knight is way above our weight class. We're like level 7, and a Death Knight is like just amazingly badass. Lord Soth from Dragonlance is the Death Knight. Now, granted, he's like one of the most badass things ever. He's like a major NPC, but like, a Death Knight is fucking brutal. So like, how the fuck did a Death Knight get in here? Like, how does a guy at that level get in fucking Barovia? But I guess that's the trick, isn't it? Like, somehow a Death Knight fucking got in here, and that is somehow what's masking, like, somehow he's masking his presence and the presence of all these undead horsemen from Strahd von Zarovich. So now we're like, oh fuck. There's Oreo. We're like, oh fuck. Now what do we do? So now we're like, should we talk to Strahd? And I'm like, no, we shouldn't. Oh fuck, you're talking to Strahd. What are you doing? So they're talking to Strahd. So they're like, oh, you think it's a Death Knight? Oh, I know that guy. Yeah, we had problems with him once. So yeah, he doesn't give them anything, but he's like, yeah, he starts giving us backstory on this guy, and he's like, you can't kill him, but you can bind him. You know, there are ways you can magically bind him, and what you can do is you can, sorry, that's the garage door. Miles is home. What you can do is you can essentially drive him away. If you break his command, he's only as strong as the soldiers around him. You know, alone, his strength is only as, you know, his strength diminishes as his army diminishes. So like they're like, that's his strength. So if he's alone, he's almost nothing. He's still badass, but he can't wreak nearly the kind of terror. And you know, at that point, you know, he's easy pickings, essentially. So he's like, so you know, using this scroll, you can bind him long enough to essentially break his forces. And so we're like, okay, that still sounds like it sucks, especially if it doesn't work. And he's like, it'll work. Trust me. So we're like, we don't trust you. He's like, trust me. Would I lie? And we're like, no, yes, but... So I'm like, you don't... All right, fine. So we go over there, and we finally find these guys, and they're holed up in a mountain cave. And so we catch them just as they're riding out for another raid, and right away the fight is on. So we have horses and they have horses, and my guy is really one of the only guys who's trained in horseback fighting. In fact, I have a lance because I'm trained in this shit. The other guy is not so much. So the fight is actually kind of interesting in that the The spellcaster is trying to cast spells from horseback. Again, an interesting prospect. But he's actually laying down some pretty heavy artillery. The first thing he has to do is cast the binding ritual on the Death Knight, which thank God that worked. But what we did not expect was the fact that although there weren't nearly as many undead horsemen as we thought there would be, we thought they would be like kind of skeletons. Like skeletons are like level 1 kind of creatures. We thought there would just be a shitload of them. No, there were like 12 of them. But these guys were like bad ass. These guys were essentially like really, really high-level fighters that just happened to be skeletons. So, like, don't let the fact that they were skeletons fool you. Like, skeletons in the monster manual do not denote what these guys are. Just, like, when I say skeletal horsemen, just imagine these guys are, like, really, really badass horsemen. So, like, all of a sudden we are in the fight of our fucking lives. So, like, I'm fucking jousting, and I'm doing really well. Like, I'm actually having one of the better fights of my life. Like, I'm kicking ass. So, I'm calling down divine punishment. I'm doing my Paladin wrath shit. Doug, doing his Vem thing, not doing so well. Because his undead thing is... His grasp of it is imperfect. And so when he raises the dead... He can animate dead, and he can animate quite a few dead, but his undead are kind of like zombies. You know, he actually could raise some fairly sizable zombies. Like he can raise the dead of, like, ogres and things like that. So he can raise some big ones, but these guys are horsemen, and so, like, they can just kind of ride down anything. So he's not of much use, really. His biggest spell was, I think it's a level 1 spell called, I think, like, Chill Touch, which can repel the undead. So, like, it's honestly, like, almost like it's like a burning hands type thing, but it's like he basically points his finger, and it's like a really cold finger, and the undead go, ooh, and they have to run away from him. So, like, he's like chill touching people, the horsemen, and they're like, ooh, so they go away. But yeah, eventually Doug catches like a fucking broadsword to the leg, and it crits him. And it crits him bad. So Vem the Digger gets critted like mad, and it severs his leg at the hip. And he's down. And I mean, he's down like he's down. So like he's just, and we're like, oh shit, he's fucked. And the cleric's like way over here because he's doing the same thing I am. He's just kind of like riding circles, like doing the whole, like, he bought a horseman's flail, and so he's like swinging that fucker, doing the same thing I am with my lance. He's just like, we gotta keep moving and hammer this shit. And so, you know, Vem is on the ground like, what the fuck, oh my god, you know, and essentially, you know, Doug out of character is like, I'm fucked, just go, you know, because he's like, you know, because if one of us gets off their horse to help him, we're gonna get ridden down, you know. It's already bad enough. We're in the fight of our fucking lives, and we don't have much time before the binding spell wears off. We have to crush these guys and get the fuck out of there before the Death Knight, you know, wakes up and he rides us down anyway. So we have to get the fuck out of there. So, like, we have, like, no time. And so the question is, like, so now I'm thinking, like, my only idea is, like, I'm lawful good. So, like, I'm like, no man gets left behind. I have to ride back as fast as possible. So I'm like, once this guy in front of me is down, I have to go back as soon as possible. But the thing is, he is bleeding out so fast, I don't think he's going to make it. But I'm going to, like, I have to drop the guy in front of me, so I have to ride through this guy right in front of me and go through there. So, like, I'm fucking fighting this guy. I have to ride through him, so I'm like, I'm riding through him. And so I'm like, I'm getting caught up in this fight, and so, like, I'm stuck. The cleric, he can't do nothing. He's in the middle. He can't do it. And he's like, I'm sorry, man. I can't. Like, I can't get to you. We got all our miniatures out there, and he's like, I'm sorry. You know? And normally, like, this is the sort of thing, like, if he could, he would. We really could not get to him. I'm trying my best. I'm like, ah! So, he's gonna go down. So, like, And plus, we're getting the shit kicked out of ourselves too. So the cleric is doing everything he can to throw healing around the field. You know, so he honestly, he has to keep his, you know, there's priorities here, man. There's triage, but he's trying his best. We're doing it. So like, it's such a mess. This thing has turned into a grade A clusterfuck because it wasn't that we weren't prepared for a hard fight. We were, but man, this just turned into a fucking slaughter. Because this fight, honestly, we were doing amazingly well because this was a tough fight. This is like one of the hardest fights I've ever seen in my life. And I was, like I said, I was in beast mode for this thing. This is one of the better fights I've ever had in my life. It was this and the fucking Dormouse fight where I was just like on fire. This was a glorious fight, man. So I'm finally about to, the DM is actually kind of acting mysterious at this point. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Because we kind of took a, you know, during this point when he went down, when Doug went down and things were like, we're like, oh shit, his fucking leg is off. Oh my God. We kind of took a break because we had to talk about, we were going to talk about what we're going to do because he's way over the fight. So we had to talk strategy. So we kind of took a break to get some Mountain Dews, you know, things got intense. So we kind of had to talk strategy. So we're talking strategy, and we go over there. DM's acting kind of mysterious. So we're like, okay, so finally I drop my guy, and I ride over to where Vem is. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to drop off my horse and do my lay on hands on Vem. And he's like, well, before you drop off your horse, you don't see him. You ride over to where he was, and you don't see him. I'm like, where the fuck do you mean I don't see him? His fucking leg dropped off. Where did he go? he ain't going anywhere. He's like, well, roll your perception. And I'm like, okay. So I roll my perception, and I make it. And so he says, well, oh, he's over there. And so he points you see his horse, and you see he's fighting on the other side. His horse is over there, and you see him fighting on the other side of his horse. I mean, what do you mean I see him fighting on the other side? You see him standing over there, and he's fighting on the other side of his horse. He's doing his chill touch shit. You know, he got his shovel in one hand, and he's fucking, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And I'm like, did you? I can't. He's like, no, you can't talk to him. This is a fucking fight. You just keep fighting. So finally, we win the fight. We're all beat to shit, and we run away. And I'm like, okay, talk. What the fuck happened? Do you have like healing magic I don't know about? And he's like, okay, look. I ain't gonna lie to you. He says, you're not gonna like this. He's like, but you're not gonna like this. And I'm like, I know I'm not gonna like this. What did you do? What did you do, Ray? And he goes, you know that werewolf blood that we collected? And I'm like, oh no. He's like, I shotgunned that stuff. I drank that. I was like, oh, I was bleeding out, man. What did you want? So I drank that stuff. And then I started sewing my leg back on. And so I'm like, so he's laying on the ground. His fucking stump is like, so I was like, you took the werewolf blood you harvested like a week ago, and then you drank it, and then you sewed your leg back on, and then like then you stood up and started fighting again, and I'm like. He's like, yeah, I talked to the DM, and he's like, I was like, oh my God. So, okay, side note, that would so not work. But, when you're a DM, that was brilliant. You know, when you're a DM, you let shit like that go sometimes. You know, I don't know how it works in D&D, like lycanthropy, when it comes to like how fast it takes to set in, you know, how the regeneration works, you know, what the rate is, you know, how fast it works, blah, 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 blah. But that was kind of like the fact that, you know, in the span of like the 10 minutes it took to, you know, for us to get up, take a break, the fact that he was like, I'm going to try to save myself and live, this is the only chance I have. You know, the fact that because in D&D at least, werewolves regenerate. They get regenerating hit points. So he's like, this is maybe the only thing that can at least stabilize me. And so, like, I'm gonna do what I can to try it. So, like, he fucking drinks the shit. He fucking puts his leg back on his stump and he tries to, like, sew it back on. And so, like, sure enough, it works. So, like, I don't know technically whether or not in the rules it would have worked, or at least worked that fast. Like, but the thing is, the DM is like, you know what? In Ravenloft, and that's the thing, like, in Ravenloft, it works. Because in Ravenloft, for dramatic purposes, a lot of shit will work. Because it's Ravenloft. And, like, the Dark Powers, that's the thing, is if it amuses the Dark Powers, it'll work. You know what I mean? More than any other place, really. The Dark Powers have a sense of humor. Especially if it turns out bad. You know? So they're like, oh yeah, this guy just drank werewolf blood to save his own ass? Yeah, it works. Does it make sense? No. Well, I mean, is it physically possible? Like, the technical, physical sense, we're talking about D&D. We're talking about werewolves here. Like, pff, even the Dark Powers are like, this is Ravenloft. Yeah, it works. Of course it does. You know. So the DM is like, yeah, of course it works. And I'm like, oh my god. So, I'm like, you know, Vem is like, he's looking at me, he's like, I knew you wouldn't like it. I'm like, no, I don't like it. So he's like, look, this is manageable. And I'm like, so he's like, no, look, this week, I've researched this. And so they kind of came up with a plan, you know, as the moons go. And long story short, it didn't work. You know, eventually we had to put him down, but we tried. So, but this is the moral of the story, this is why I like Ravenloft. Ravenloft is such a great setting for a number of reasons, but the reason I like Ravenloft is because, especially in any kind of long-term campaign, if you try it, it's you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And that was the genius of that campaign. We were all going to end up like that. In some of us in that fight with the horsemen died. I think a couple of us died. It was either one or two of us died. And Vem, essentially in that one act, became a monster. He lived long enough to see himself become the villain eventually. My character, like it or not, became tainted when he started working for Strahd von Zarevich. He wasn't working for him, but he was essentially doing what he said. Because as the campaign went on, Strahd was giving him essentially handing out work. Stuff that was helping people. Helping innocent people. You know, it made sense. It fell in line with what he would have normally done anyway. You know, he's like, these people are getting torn apart by monsters. Go stop the monsters. I'm like, well, okay. You know, like, why wouldn't I? But I'll tell you why wouldn't I, is because Strahd von Zarevich said so. But now I'm like, if I don't, the people get torn apart by monsters. You know, so like it or not now, that's the thing, is my honor is being tainted whether I like it or not. And so the question is, like, I'm being rewarded now for this guy. See, that's the thing, is, you see where this is going. I'm on this downward slide. So at some point, I become this guy's apprentice. I become Darth Spoony. You know what I mean? So I loved this DM. Because you could see where this would have gone had the campaign lasted much longer. You know what I mean? This was great. So I really liked this guy. He was really, really good. And it really showed what Ravenloft was capable of. very cool guy. I learned a lot from playing with this guy, especially when it came to how to manipulate players and how to manipulate alignments, how to manipulate paladins, really. Especially to when it comes to everyone has to do what they believe is right, and oftentimes you can use that against them because doing what they think, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and even you can help the bad guy out by doing the right thing. There's nothing wrong with killing monsters, but sometimes the bad guy benefits from that, so yeah, had it gone much longer, I'm essentially becoming Strahd's right-hand man. In fact, I was becoming rapidly his most valuable. I essentially stopped the biggest threat to his regime in the realm, or at least I was part of it. So he was ever so grateful to me. So he's like, "Hey, anything you want, just name it." He's like, I cannot express my gratitude to you, Sir Stark. And I'm like, I didn't do it for you, and he's like, "Nevertheless, if you need anything, just name it." And sure enough, there came a time when I needed something, and I had to call in the favor. You know what I mean? And so then he had my nuts. And that was by design. The DM had, I had no choice. And of course, the DM wrote an adventure. He wrote an adventure where I had no choice but to call it in. So, because I needed, some holy artifact or something to save something. And so, Strahd, of course, would be the only guy who fucking knows where it is. So I had to call him the favor and ask him where it is. He's like, "Oh, of course it's over there, in this other dark realm. You need help getting there?" And I'm like, "Yes." So, that's how it goes. So, that's the moral of the story. That's Ravenloft. And that at least is how, there's a lot of ways to play Ravenloft, but that at least is how the tone of the story goes. And that at least is how, to me, the Dark Power should operate. Is it always... And that's how to break the rules. That's how a DM should break the rules sometimes. Is when it's dramatically appropriate. And Ravenloft is one of those places where dramatically appropriate works more than any other place. Because that's... basically, the Dark Powers kind of is a sadistic author. More than anything, there's the Dark Powers are basically just like a sadistic author holding puppet strings. He's just more actively involved. It's almost like in that Looney Tunes cartoon where that guy with the painter's brush is fucking with Daffy Duck. It's a little less involved than that, but it's almost like that kind of sick sense of humor with some involvement. Anyway, but yeah, that's Ravenloft. That's one of my favorite. It's one of the only long-term campaigns I ever played in Ravenloft. Everything else has been kind of a one-shot. Most people play one-shots in Ravenloft. But yeah, campaigns are rare, but that's one of the few times that's the best. That was a great campaign. And one of the few times I've ever seen it pulled off successfully. Great one. Anyway, if you ever feel compelled to do Ravenloft, that's a good start, and I don't mind if you use it. So, it wasn't my campaign to use. So, but yeah, use that against anyone who's a good guy. I like that trick. It's a good secret weapon. Is before you know it, they're working for the bad guy, and before you know it, you've got an apprentice. Bye.